Welcome back, focused learners. Today we're tackling a really critical explainer covering Module 3 of our cleaning validation series, contamination and cross-contamination risks. And hey, we aren't just going to talk about dirt today. No, we're going to treat contamination exactly as what it is in the pharma world, an active, microscopic threat to patient safety. We're going to break down exactly what these threats are, how they manage to infiltrate our systems, and most importantly, how we build rock-solid defenses against them. Now, before we get into the pure technical mechanics, consider this quote. Preventing cross-contamination is the operational expression of cleaning validation's ethical purpose. I love this because it perfectly anchors the stakes of this explainer. The technical stuff we're about to cover, it isn't just about compliance or, ticking a box for an audit. It's fundamentally about patient care. It's about making absolutely sure the medicine designed to heal a patient doesn't accidentally harm them just because a microscopic residue got left behind. Okay, let's dive right in. Here's how we're structuring today's threat assessment. First, defining the threat, then categorizing the types of residues, mapping out contamination pathways, identifying high-risk targets, and finally, laying out our defense strategy. So, starting with Section 1, defining the threat. Let's get the foundational terminology of our security briefing squared away. Here's our baseline enemy, contamination. Basically, it's any unwanted substance or microorganism introduced into a product or process that compromises its identity, strength, quality, or purity. This is the overarching threat in pharmaceutical manufacturing. Whether it's a tiny particle of dust, a rogue bacterium, or a chemical trace, if it shouldn't be there and it alters the quality of the drug, boom, it's contamination. And it affects patient safety directly, especially when we're talking about injectables or high-potency drugs where the tolerance for error is, well, practically zero. But what's really interesting here is the specific nature of cross-contamination. This is the unwanted transfer of one product or process residue to another product or batch through shared equipment or facility resources. Notice the key word there, shared. Cross-contamination is specifically tied to multi-product facilities where we are sharing resources. And because of this, cross-contamination is the primary, specific target of cleaning validation. Simply put, we clean because we share. Moving on to Section 2, the 6 types of residues. Let's actually categorize these microscopic threats we're hunting down. So there are 6 distinct categories of residues we have to control. First, we've got our active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. These are the usual suspects, right? The actual drug compounds from the previous batch. But then we also have cleaning agents, excipients used in drug formulation, microbial bioburden, endotoxins from bacteria, and degradation products, which are basically just broken down APIs. We literally cannot ignore any of these. Like if you run a sterile biological operation, microbial bioburden and endotoxins, they might actually be an even bigger threat than the chemical APIs themselves. And we really have to pay special attention to this one specific fact. Cleaning agents are themselves contaminants that require validation. There's a documented real-world failure where a manufacturer focused solely on removing the active drug and, incredibly, completely forgot to validate the removal of their sodium hydroxide cleaning agent. So what happened? Well, that alkaline cleaning residue was left behind, it spiked the pH of the finished product, caused product instability, and ultimately triggered a wave of customer complaints. Our defenses absolutely must include the very chemicals we're using to clean. All right, on to Section 3, pathways of contamination. Let's map out our vulnerabilities and see exactly how these threats manage to travel. It really begs a critical question. How do these microscopic residues actually move from one batch to the next? I mean, they don't just teleport, right? They require physical pathways. Contaminants don't migrate on their own. They need a vector. Equipment is the most obvious pathway. Residues love to hide in hard-to-clean dead legs, gaskets, and complex geometries. But think about the other routes. Personnel are incredibly active vectors. Operators can easily carry residues on their PPE, hands, or tools straight from one room to another. Materials like shared utensils can act as a physical bridge. Utilities like water and steam can carry contaminants throughout a facility. And perhaps the most insidious vector is air, where HVAC return air and aerosols can spread particulates right over our physical boundaries. To really anchor this concept of pathways, consider this true crime case of pharmaceutical manufacturing, the famous beta-lactam failure. A facility was producing both penicillin and non-penicillin products. They had them nominally segregated in different equipment, which sounds good, but they shared an HVAC system. That return air acted as an airborne pathway, carrying penicillin particulates right into the non-penicillin manufacturing area. The result? trace contamination caused severe allergic reactions in sensitized patients, leading to a massive recall of 18 batches across multiple markets and a brutal regulatory warning letter. Let's shift to Section 4, high-risk targets. We need to look at our most vulnerable products. So these are our high-risk targets. Highly potent compounds like cytotoxics or hormones, sensitizing compounds like penicillins, biological products, sterile injectables, and pediatric products. The absolute crucial point here is that these specific product types leave zero room for error. A microscopic trace amount of a highly potent hormone or a sensitizing penicillin carried over into the next batch can cause entirely disproportionate harm to a patient, especially children, given their lower body weights. Because these products are so incredibly vulnerable, we have to make very strategic equipment choices. For a lot of products, shared equipment is fine, provided we use rigorous validation and strictly calculated health-based exposure limits to ensure zero cross-contamination. But for extreme risks, like those highly sensitizing penicillins we just talked about, cleaning validation alone just isn't enough to guarantee safety. You actually must use dedicated equipment. Physical segregation is literally the only safe option. Let me give you another real-world failure that perfectly shows why our limits on shared equipment must be absolutely flawless. A contract manufacturer was processing hormonal contraceptives, followed by general over-the-counter painkillers in shared tablet compression equipment. Now, their cleaning validation used completely arbitrary dose-based criteria, say 1/1000th of a dose. But actually, scratch that, that is completely inadequate for hormones that are active at sub-microgram levels. As you'd expect, trace hormones carried over right into the OTC painkillers, causing unexpected hormonal effect in the patients taking them. This is exactly why we must use rigorous, toxicologically calculated health-based exposure limits, or HBELs, rather than just guessing with arbitrary dose criteria when we share equipment. Finally, Section 5, the defense strategy. Let's look at exactly how this risk mindset drives our validation efforts. The entire foundation of our defense is quantitative risk assessment. By identifying all of these residues and mapping out all these potential pathways, we can calculate actual safe exposure limits based on real toxicology, those health-based exposure limits we just mentioned. We aren't guessing here. We're grounding our entire cleaning validation program in the actual, calculable impact on the patient. And all of this builds into a comprehensive strategy we call defense in depth. You basically never want a single point of failure. Your defense is made of multiple, overlapping controls. It breaks down to roughly a balance of good equipment design without dead legs, robust and validated cleaning procedures executed by highly trained operators, and strong environmental controls like dedicated HVAC and strict personnel flows. It's like a giant safety net. If one layer fails, the others catch the threat. So, to summarize the core philosophy of this whole explainer, risk thinking drives the entire validation process. Understanding the microscopic mechanics of carryover, knowing whether you're dealing with a standard excipient or a highly potent hormone, and knowing if it can travel by air or by a shared utensil is what dictates your strategic cleaning validation rules. We are basically concentrating our rigor exactly where the cross-contamination risk is the highest. I want to leave you with a provocative question. In another real-world failure, a manufacturer had technically segregated their gluten-free and gluten-containing products, but trace gluten kept cross-contaminating the batches. Why? Because they shared the exact same cleaning utensils. The segregation was only procedural, on paper, not physical in reality. So I ask you, look at your own facilities. Are your segregation protocols truly physical, or are they just procedural assumptions waiting to fail? Evaluate your pathways, assess your risks, and build a defense that truly protects the patient. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.